have gone feral and I'm not going back. In light of the dumpster fire known as 2020, I hereby declare myself feral. I hereby liberate myself from the constraints of domestication. I strip my bondage and run naked into the forest. I have no plans to revert back to the old ways of society when this is all over. This begins a long journey back to myself. I have lived a life of in-betweens. I grew up on a border town crossing between two cultures. I am a mixed-race mutt. I've been confronted with prejudice and chipped away at my own. I have had heteronormative relationships and queer ones. I have had good health insurance at times and been on food stamps at others. To the many of us who have been on both sides of the oppressed and oppressor game, it's pretty damn clear that we should all abandon this system and declare ourselves feral. Almost any young person will tell you things are a mess. None of us can say that everything will be okay. In fact, I believe that some things will get worse. I don't have much hope for the upcoming presidential election. Our planet is falling apart. And any moment you pause to catch your breath in the fight for social justice, hatred comes along to kick you back to square one. And there's a pandemic. At the same time, there are opportunities for transformation emerging all around us, and sometimes that gives me hope. I feel encouraged by the people creating change in my community. Our culture is buzzing with conversations about how to dismantle white supremacy and colonialism, and people are questioning all aspects of society, including ourselves. I feel free to liberate myself without shame, and I feel like I have found my way back to a more genuine version of who I am. For all the good and the bad that this year has brought, I have no interest in going back to the way things were. Onward, I say. Onward, beyond these old structures. Onward to the forest. For me, COVID-19 brought on a dramatic shift from being a full-time performer and educator, surrounded by humans, to being home, alone, all day. At first, the isolation was startling. The first 10 days of quarantine, I stared out the window, stunned. Then, I tried my hardest to be as busy as possible and not let myself stop moving. I cleaned and organized everything. I took on unnecessary tasks, but eventually I had to give in to the emptiness. I finally sank deep within my subconscious and pulled out some stale, expired feelings from within. Waves of emotion began pouring out of me, and with nothing to direct them at, and no one to project them on, I felt them raw. The tensions of a life in the rat race were shedding away. I had been given the gift of taking a long, deep look within myself and clearing things out. And then I felt awake. I began to notice extremely subtle sounds and patterns all around me. This was my first step into my feral nature, tuning back in with myself and with the present moment. I'd been so preoccupied that I hadn't even noticed how I was feeling in my day-to-day existence, or the real details of what was happening around me. During this time of self-reflection, someone in my Facebook network posted, "Why do I feel like I'm getting gayer during quarantine?" This person hypothesized that being gay is their natural state, but when they have to operate within societal confines every day, there's a subconscious pressure to be more heteronormative. I think that speaks to all of our experiences. Everyone conforms to society. But during quarantine, some of us got to step outside of that pressure and really evaluate who we are. I began to ask myself little questions like, why are shaved legs better than regular legs? For whom do I wear a bra? How much of my productivity comes from an insecure need to seem valuable? These little inquiries were an indication that I was loosening my grip on social norms, even if in the smallest ways. As I was Marie Kondoing various aspects of society, my own behaviors, and my beliefs, I found more and more things that did not, in the words of Marie Kondo, spark joy. Energetically, I had a lot to get rid of. But how would I release it? Enter Howling. On March 27th, my partner Brice Maiurro and I started to encourage people to go outside and howl at 8 p.m. This idea came without purpose, out of instinct. It wasn't a statement, we just thought it would be cool if we could get some friends to howl. People latched onto the idea, and eventually we had over 500,000 people howling worldwide, from all different demographics. As the idea grew, we became witness to the purpose of howling. Howling had a certain magic in it, in that howling does not inherently belong to a single group of people. And howling does not inherently express a single emotion. Therefore, at 8 p.m. every night, we created a collective cacophony of howling, a smorgasbord of feelings and intentions. People reported that they howled because they were fighting drug addiction, or because they were in love, or for the loss of a loved one, in frustration, or exuberance, or joy, or freedom. I think many people howled to feel less alone, and to express a feeling that they couldn't even name. Many people grappled with the fear of howling and had to work up a lot of courage to disrupt the silence of their neighborhood, to allow their voice to take up space. Whatever people had inside, it was coming out. Howling was a release. Despite our containment, we as a society found a way to shed our energy and tap into our feral natures. And at the apex of this moment, when we were all in a space of reflection and reclaiming, the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd jolted the nation, and we rushed to the streets as if racist murders by police were a new idea. Jumping into the protests was a knee-jerk reaction. I found myself with guns pointed at me, officers yelling, tear gas in my lungs and in my eyes. This was not an uncommon experience. I found myself narrowly dodging an explosive can that a police officer had thrown in my direction. It could have given me permanent brain damage if it had landed a few feet closer. I found myself caring for people who were badly injured by the police. I found myself in a crowd that was running in fear and chanting in fury. Peaceful protesters were met with violence by the Denver Police Department. But this was nothing compared to the experiences of so many Black people that they have had with the police. I had already been questioning the society that I lived in, but the deaths of so many Black people at the hands of police officers has made me rethink it even more. Not only should we consider transforming our culture for everyone's sake, but we need to realize that going back to the old ways would be a choice to continue to support the dehumanization of BIPOC people in our communities. There's no ethical way to go back to the way things were in 2019. Howling was replaced with the sounds of sirens, shouting, pepper bullets, and shots of tear gas. Denver went into curfew. Downtown was covered in graffiti and stores were boarded up. A man attached himself to a Confederate statue in front of the state capitol building. Every night, the streets were filled with people screaming and pouring milk in their face to ease the pain of tear gas. Then, suddenly, as quickly as the violence had started, it stopped, because the police stopped showing up at protests altogether. The fact that they had been tear-gassing crowds and shooting pepper bullets at us, and then stopped, and then the protests were suddenly peaceful, seemed absurd. It was like the moment when Toto pulls back the curtain to reveal the real Wizard of Oz. Our own curtain revealed that police violence to contain the protests had never been necessary in the first place. They were not protecting anyone. This irony of that paired with our purpose for protesting was not lost on anyone. I went home feeling disturbed and disillusioned. The structures I had been raised to think that I needed were, and had been, being used against the people they claimed to serve. 2020 had been ablaze with protests across the country and around the world. In the face of such blatant hatred as the murder of Elijah McClain, many white people who were once afraid to ruffle feathers of the racist people around them have finally taken a stand against racism for the first time. given the option between quietly participating in a broken system and making other people uncomfortable, even those who benefit from our broken system are finally choosing the latter. It's messy and it's imperfect, but it's a good first step. In early June of 2020, I posted in the Go Outside and Howl at 8 p.m. social media page with this simple question: how are you feeling? People from all over the country responded, and here are some of the things they said. Mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted, defeated, depressed and tired, mad as hell, overwhelmed. So stressed I can't sleep because I just have nightmares when I do. Sad, exhausted, unmotivated, stressed, empty. I had to take a moment to grieve over the hundreds of comments. As we all confront racism within ourselves, our families, and our communities, it hurts and it's hard. But we are finally letting it out and dealing with it. And out of all of this darkness, there are some real changes happening in policy. I woke up one morning in mid-June to a slew of articles about new protocols being created to combat police brutality in the United States. 2020 has shown me that the system is not working for us, yet we are working for the system. And it is so often that people who work the hardest, essential workers like construction workers and bus drivers and medical staff, benefit the least. So now is a time for envisioning a new way of life, and we have a great example set for us in the Black Lives Matter movement. As for me, I have already wasted enough of my time trying to fit into this tired-assed, dehumanizing, colonizer-centric system. I'm now going through a process of shedding my miseducation so that I may throw it into the dumpster fire of 2020 and run naked and feral into the forest where I can be myself and I don't have to live off of other people's pain. I have begun interrogating myself to find ways that I can dismantle the broken systems within me and my communities. I want to continue Marie Kondoing all of my little socially constructed behaviors and decolonize my mind. I want to liberate myself and give others permission to do the same. I don't want 2020 to have been for nothing. I want to remember this year. I want it to have changed me, even in ways that are small. For this reason, I hope to remain as feral as possible for as long as I can. And this is how I aim to do it. I will not avoid talking about racism because I might get it wrong. I will take the feedback when I do get it wrong. I will not give money to companies I do not believe in. I will interrogate myself on my own biases regularly. I will understand that we as a community are capable of radical change, and I will hold us to that standard. We closed down the country for COVID. Imagine what else we could do if it were a priority. I will question the concept of professionalism. Reject the idea that in order to create change, you have to create a plan that is palatable, that appeals to land-owning white men. I will exist as a work in progress and love myself for it. Remember that I don't have to be exhausted to be valuable. Use my language however I please. Resist the need to be right. I will resist the need to be in a hurry. I will listen. I will feel free to enjoy physical pleasure without shame. Remember my bodily autonomy when I consider what I want to do with it and how I want to express it. Stay close to myself. Listen to my own thoughts. Feel my feelings. Listen to my body. Remember that I don't have to be the leader in order to be important. That the person who went to college doesn't always know best. That people who have less are not the least capable. That if I don't fit perfectly into categories, that's because I'm a human. That it's normal to sit still. That it's not normal to try to be productive for hours at a time without getting up. I will continue to shape myself into the kind of person that I want to be and advocate for people, not systems. I will not let convenience be an excuse for negligence, such as pollution. I will know that I don't have to be friends with men who talk to me like I am a child. I will embrace aging. Remember to allow myself to be affected by things. Remain in relationship with the earth and the sky. Remember that just because something is legal doesn't make it right, and just because something is illegal doesn't make it wrong. I will remember to walk away from my own social constructs from time to time, as I did in quarantine, and evaluate. So, I will be busy shedding my miseducation for the foreseeable future, searching for some version of myself that precedes the systems of oppression that I have been shaped to. I declare myself feral, and if that makes me ugly, uncomfortable, unprofessional, or disturbing to society at large, so be it. We have so much to throw into the wreckage of 2020, and so much to gain by letting it burn. This is our chance to undergo a metamorphosis into ferality in hopes of finding our ways back to ourselves. I'll see you on the other side, naked in the forest, howling and free.